Well, the 2019 racing season has finally reached its conclusion, and the question now is, who became the 2019 NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series champion? Well, I'm about to tell you after we get through the review. So here it is, the final review of 2019. This is the fuel. What is happening, ladies and germs? This is the PackerMan, and welcome to the season finale of The Fuel, the final review of 2019. It's been a very long season. 38 total videos that I've done with The Fuel. Of course, this show started out as Final Analysis. Then I made the switch to The Fuel right before Indianapolis, I believe. And it's been that way ever since, and we have finally made it to the end of our first season doing these reviews. And today we're going to be reviewing the final Ford Championship Weekend event at Homestead Miami Speedway, at least for the foreseeable future, the Ford EcoBoost 400, the championship finale for the NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series. And quite frankly, this race kind of epitomized just how fucking shitty these playoffs have been. Because overall, this race was kind of trash. The middle portion of the race was pretty good, actually, but I'll tell you what, that first stage sucked a big bag of dicks, and then the final portion of this race, the last 50 laps, wow. That may have been the most boring stretch of racing this entire season. And it was for the goddamn championship. Like, really? And if anything, these playoffs really exposed just how bad this race package can be. Like, it seems, I mean, not even the mile-and-a-half races at Texas and then here at Homestead seemed to be that good. Texas sucked. This race sucked for the most part. I mean, even though there were 6 pure lead changes overall, and Stage 2 and the beginning of Stage 3 was actually pretty good, all things considered. The race overall was just mediocre. And, you know, it was just the icing on top of the shit sandwich. You know, and to be honest, these entire playoffs were just fucking shitty from the word go. I mean, Las Vegas, I suppose, was pretty decent, but I mean, Richmond was not that good. The Charlotte Road Course race wasn't as good as last year's. I mean, Talladega was pretty baller, and Kansas was pretty decent, but then when we got to the round of 8, it just took a nosedive. Martinsville was not that good. Texas sucked. Phoenix was probably the worst running of the race ever there. And then Homestead was just such a lackluster affair. Honestly, I'm just glad that the season's over. And this is the only review I have left to do. So, for the next 3 months, as far as motorsports is concerned. As you can see, I'm a little bit tired, but we're going to get through this. So let's go ahead and get started with this. First, we're going to start out with the news of the week, because there is some pretty big things that happened over the past couple weeks. So let's get into it. First up, we have a little bit more silly season news that kind of came out this week. Cole Custer, of course, finished runner-up in the Xfinity Championship, which I'll be talking about here in a minute. But he's going to be moving up to the Cup Series. There's a lot of speculation as to where he would end up. He's going to be driving the 41 car, displacing Daniel Suarez. This was an obvious move, honestly. I mean, when you have a guy like Cole Custer waiting in the wings, and he won, I think, like 7 times this year in the 00 car in the Xfinity Series. That's not exactly a guy you want to let slip through your fingers. You know, and let's be completely honest here. Daniel Suarez, I mean, I like the guy. I mean, I really do. And I want to see him succeed. I mean, I remember years ago when the K&N Series went to Columbus Motor Speedway before the track closed down. And I remember actually going out onto the track and actually meeting him. And I remember actually saying to him, hey, good luck tonight. And then he ended up winning the race. So, I want to see this guy do well. I want to see him succeed in NASCAR. Of course, he's already really succeeded. I mean, he was the 2016 Xfinity champion. So he definitely seems to have some pedigree. But, the unfortunate thing is he's been in the Cup Series for the last 3 years and with really good teams. I mean, he was with the 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, and then he went over to the 41 for Stewart Haas, and he just hasn't produced. Has not made the playoffs in any of the 3 seasons in top tier equipment. That's just unacceptable, and that's just the bottom line. And of course, being rushed up to Cup like he was when Carl Edwards announced his sudden retirement, that didn't really help matters either. But I mean, he's had 3 years to develop, and he's just not produced. He hasn't won a race, hasn't made the playoff whatsoever. I just don't think he's ready for the Cup level yet. I think he needs at least another year or two in the Xfinity Series before he's ready to make the jump back up to the Cup Series. I mean, when you look at a guy like Cole Custer, I think he's won like 9 or 10 races in the Xfinity Series the last 2 years. And of course, you look at a guy like Christopher Bell and a guy like Tyler Reddick. All 3 of those guys have earned their rides, for sure. And I'm not saying that Suarez didn't earn his. I mean, he won the Xfinity title in 2016. It's just I think he should have spent another year at least in the Xfinity Series before moving up. I think he was just rushed up the Cup way too quickly. So I don't know what Suarez is going to do. I mean, he says he does have financial backing, so there might be a team that might take him on for 2020. But I mean, this was the most obvious move that Stewart Haas could have made. I mean, Cole Custer, I think he's ready for the big time. And that rookie battle between him and Christopher Bell and Tyler Reddick, I think, is going to be off the chains crazy. But that'll come in 2020. But without a shadow of a doubt, the biggest news, perhaps, of the year, and maybe even of the decade, and maybe even of this century, to be honest, broke a couple weeks ago. And it's still big even right at this very moment, because it's just, this is one of them, holy shit, this is one of them, you may only see this in your once in your lifetime kind of deals. Roger Penske, perhaps the most successful motorsports owner of all time, most successful team owner of all time. I mean, he has his hand in virtually every motorsport that there is. Sans Formula One. I mean, he's been in NASCAR. He's, of course, been in IndyCar. He has teams in V8 Supercars in Australia. He has a team in IMSA. I mean, he's basically everywhere. Of course, he's well known for his exploits in the Indianapolis 500, where he has won that race a record 18 times as a car owner. But his greatest achievement, I think, came this past couple weeks ago, when Roger Penske purchased not only the NTT IndyCar Series, yes, he purchased the entire series, a series that he has dominated over the years, but in addition to all of that, he purchased the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Let's take a think. Just let that sink in for a minute. It seems to make a lot of sense too, because it's like, here's a guy who's dominated at Indianapolis over the years. I mean, 18 Indianapolis 500 victories as an owner, and now he's the actual legitimate owner of the place. And what makes it even more insane is the fact that the Holman George family has owned the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the last 74 years. That's insane. I mean, we are witnessing what really is the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. I mean, it's not exactly something that comes along very much in the world of motorsports. And we witnessed it right in front of us with Roger Penske purchasing not only the IndyCar series but the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And a lot of people and they didn't disclose how much the deal was for, because I think they're both private companies, but reports are indicating that the deal was reportedly for around $2 billion. That's with a B. You know, and some people might be asking, well, how does Roger Penske have that much money? Well, first of all, how do you think he managed to get the funds together to, pursue his dream in auto racing? He started his own truck rental company, Penske Truck Rentals. It's a business that is still being run to this day. And that's how he basically got a lot of the funding that he needed to begin his motorsports exploits as a car owner. I mean, he has been around for a long ass time as a car owner. And even now that he's over 80 years old, he still has a huge passion for motorsports. And now he's, and he has had a lot of different achievements as a car owner, winning Daytona 500s, of course winning the Indianapolis 500, winning sports car titles, you name it. But I think him being able to acquire a track that he has become so synonymous with may be his greatest achievement. And maybe one of the greatest achievements in all of motorsports. Seriously. Because when you acquire a track that is that legendary, that is that revered, that's been around since the beginning of the 1900s and has such a rich racing history. I mean, what else could he do at this point in his life? I mean, he has lived I guess you could say, a charmed life. And look at all the accomplishments that he's done in motorsports in his entire career. And now he has acquired the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There is nothing left for this man to accomplish. And at 82 years old, I believe, I think that's how old the captain is, he's basically done it all. And yet he continues, to do this because he has a huge passion for motorsports that is not rivaled by very many people, honestly. For him to have this kind of passion, for basically half a century of his life is it is incredible dedication to this sport. And I don't think a lot of people really realize how big of a deal this is. I mean, this is literally the dawn of a new era that we're witnessing in motorsports. So it is going to be very interesting to see what happens with the IndyCar series and with the Indianapolis 500 going forward in 2020 and beyond. But yeah, that's pretty much the big news of the year, I believe. But let's get to real quickly what happened with the Xfinity and Truck Series Championships at Homestead this weekend. Tyler Reddick has done something that nobody else has ever done. Now, him winning back-to-back championships is nothing new. I mean, it's happened a couple of times in the past. Dale Jr. has done it. Sam Ard was the first to do it, I believe. Martin Truex Jr. did it. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. did it. But his is unique in the fact that he is the only driver to win back-to-back championships driving for two different teams. Last year, he won the championship driving for Junior Motorsports. And he only won twice that entire year, which was the beginning race at Daytona and the ending race at Homestead. He basically cruised through the rest of the season, wasn't really a factor in a lot of races, and still ended up winning the championship at Homestead. And there were a lot of people that were not too happy about that, considering, you know, he only won twice and was kind of an also-ran for most of the season. And I think Reddit kind of heard, you know, the criticisms and made the jump over to Richard Childress Racing and ended up winning, I think, 5 or 6 races this year and made himself look a lot more legitimate as a champion, and then backed it up with another championship. And of course, he's earned his spot. You know, he's going to be driving the number 8 car in the Richard Childress Racing stable next year. And of course, you got Cole Custer, who finished second in the championship for the second straight year. He's going to be driving the number 41 for RCR, or not RCR, but Stewart-Haas. And Christopher Bell is going to be driving the 95 car in Cup next year with the Levine Family Racing Team, who's going to have even more support from Joe Gibbs Racing. So like I said before, that is going to be one hell of a rookie battle next year, and probably going to be the best rookie battle we've seen in quite some time. But then we get to the Truck Series, and this is where my criticisms for how dumb the playoff format is have been justified. Matt Crafton won the truck title with 0 victories. In a format that rewards victories. You know, and as per usual, there were a lot of people that were defending Crafton's championship victory, saying, oh, it is legitimate. You know, I'm not saying that he didn't, quote-unquote, earn it. You know, and it's not like I don't like Matt Crafton, because I do. I mean, I didn't hate any of the 4 guys in the championship battle, honestly. You know, it's like, I like pretty much all of them. You know, I didn't think Ross Chastain, honestly, deserved to have a shot at the title either, you know, because he didn't race in all the events. You know, but that's neither here or there at this point. The point is that, you know, he managed to make it through the playoff, and he did what he needed to do under the format that he was given. That being said, though, his run basically epitomizes how fucking stupid this playoff format is, and why I have been against it from day one. You know, I'm not one of those people that just started hating this format overnight. No. And I didn't start hating this format because, oh, well, Ross Chastain didn't win the championship. Why would I even fucking care about that, huh? What makes you think I give a shit who wins the championship? Because I don't have a dog in this fight. What pisses me off is the fact that, you know, Matt Crafton should not have even been a consideration to win the championship, okay? Because this is going to be popping up on your screen here in a second. He only had a total of 7, well, not the stats, but I'm going to read them to you anyway. He had a total of 7 top 5 finishes the entire year, which is lower than his 4 contenders, which is the lowest among the 4 championship contenders. Although he did have, I think, 18 top 10 finishes, which is tied for second, and he had a great average finish as well, which mirrored that of the 4 contenders for the championship. So it's like, well, he was consistent. And I'm not saying he wasn't consistent, but here's the thing. There were 3 other drivers who were even more consistent than him. Okay? Stuart Friesen, for instance. He had, I think, 2 wins this year. He would have finished 3rd in the championship overall, which I still think he did anyways. Either 3rd or 4th, I can't remember. Excuse me. Grant Enfinger. He was the regular season champion. Of course, he had 0 victories as well, but he was even more consistent than Matt Crafton was. And without the playoff, he would have finished 2nd. And of course, there's Brett Moffitt, who won 4 times this year. And without the playoff, he would have been the champion. You know where Matt Crafton would have finished in the championship standings without the playoff? 4th. 80 points behind Brett Moffitt. And considering that there's only 32 drivers that can qualify for a truck race, that's almost 2 full races, basically, that Crafton would have finished behind Moffitt in the championship. And then, of course, there's also the fact that he only led a grand total of 44 laps the entire season. Are you kidding me? So no, in my opinion, Matt Crafton shouldn't have even been a consideration for the championship, but because of the stupid ass playoff format, it gave him an opportunity to basically make up for a season that wasn't as good as 3 other drivers this year, honestly. And on that note, Ross Chastain, I mean, he finished second in the championship, and the fact of the matter is he should have finished 11th. Which, considering that he didn't, race in all of the events, that's still pretty damn impressive. But, I mean, this just highlights just how fucking stupid this playoff format is. And before anyone even tries to accuse me of hating the playoff format just because, one of your favorite drivers didn't win, for the record, I've hated this playoff format since day one. And if you don't believe me, that's fine, because I really don't fucking care. But I actually have a post that I made on a forum that I still go to this day that had a thread that said NASCAR looking to overhaul points chase. Of course, this was back in 2014 when they still had the original playoff chase format and then wanted to convert to the stick and ball format that we have today. And this post should show up on your screen at this moment. But I said the chase is already bad enough, but if this actually happens, it could ruin NASCAR completely, and I don't know if it could recover from it. I mean, I understand wanting to improve the product to keep up with the likes of the NFL, but this is by far the worst idea Brian France has ever concocted. Of course, this was back when Brian France was still in charge of NASCAR. Just get back to the basics, get rid of the chase, and we'll be fine, other than the fact that we need to revamp the schedule. But that's a discussion for another time. Seriously, NASCAR, get your heads out of your collective asses. Where have we heard that before? Oh yeah, last week. You're killing yourselves with these dumbass ideas, and it's going to come back and bite you where the sun don't shine if you keep this up. Last year they had their lowest attendance and lowest ratings in a long ass time. And oh, by the way, I made this post back in January of 2014, before this idea was even made official. And I remember about a week and a half later, when the thread was basically had gone silent, one of the other users then posted, "Bumpin' since it's now official." And I could remember just sitting there with my head and with my face in my hand like this. And I can remember thinking to myself, why? Why? And another guy on the forum brought this up, and it's actually a very good point too. And I think it was, I posted after him, but basically he said theoretically you could win the first 35 races and still lose the championship. Seriously. I realize that will never happen, but the fact that we have even the slightest possibility of that happening is the most retarded fucking bullshit I've ever fucking seen. And we have seen time and time again, just how fucking garbage this playoff format is. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. I've hated this format since day one, and I've shown you the proof that I cannot stand this fucking format. And I knew it was going to be a fucking failure. And it reared its ugly head yet again here in the Truck Series. I know it'll probably never happen anytime soon, but I swear to God, the day they finally announce that they are axing this format and going back to the old Winston format would be a day of great jubilation. I would literally dance on fucking camera for like 15 minutes if they actually announced that they were axing the format altogether and just going back to the regular championship format. And Eric Estep said that, I think it's too late to turn back now that we're into this format because NASCAR's already opened up that can of worms. I disagree. Mainly because of the fact that every other motorsport in the fucking world doesn't use this format and doesn't need to. IndyCar doesn't use it. Formula 1 doesn't use it. V8 Supercars doesn't use it. IMSA doesn't use it. Why does NASCAR feel the need to do it? You know, BTT, British touring cars don't need it. Why does NASCAR feel the need to use it? It's a fucking garbage format and it needs to die. Period. It is long overstayed its welcome. I mean, I remember, you know, giving the chase a chance back in 2004, but after a few years, it's like, okay, this format is stupid. And then they went to this shit, and it's like, okay, this format has long overstayed its welcome. It needs to go. Period. And the day that happens would be a day of great joy for a lot of motorsports fans, including myself. This format is fucking garbage. Speaking of fucking garbage, let's get to the dumbass of the week. And this week's dumbass of the week is Bubba Wallace. I've completely lost all respect for this guy. I really have. In addition to be a fucking garbage driver, you know, this guy basically doesn't know when to shut the fuck up. Because after, you know, his spin at Texas, and a lot of people, you know, were accusing him of spinning out intentionally, I forget who it was who interviewed him, but he basically blabbed on camera that, yeah, he did it on purpose, and he basically challenged NASCAR to do something about it. He said, I will continue to do it until they decide to do something about it. Like, how fucking stupid are you, dude? Really? I mean, the arrogance of this guy is just fucking... It's mind-blowing. You know, and I remember Dale Jarrett saying, well, it's always happened since the beginning of the sport, and it will continue to happen. Oh, so I guess that means it makes it okay, huh? No, it doesn't make it okay. So, Dale Jarrett, you can shut the fuck up. Okay, because, you know, it sounds to me like you're condoning such an action, and honestly, it makes you look like a fucking idiot. You know, self-spinning bullshit, especially when it affects the outcome of a race, that is going to make you lose respect points with me real fucking quick. And that's exactly what happened with Bubba Wallace. And quite frankly, you know, after what happened at, you know, the Charlotte Road Course race and then this shit, fuck Bubba Wallace, honestly. I honestly don't give a shit what he does at this point, if he's successful or not. Because quite frankly, he can eat a giant bag full of dicks. You know, I can't believe that I said that, you know, he was the only bright spot of the Brickyard 400, which is the only reason why it got a half a point. I honestly wish I could go back in time and change that now and just give the Brickyard 400 a 0. Because, honestly, you know, Bubba Wallace doesn't deserve my respect, and he probably never will again. Honestly. Because, I mean, why would you blab something like that to the fucking media? You know, knowing that NASCAR is going to be paying attention to that, you know? He basically challenged them to their fucking face, you know, to give him a penalty. And what did they end up doing? They penalized him 50 championship points and fined him $50,000. What a fucking moron. You know, I understand that he wears his emotions on his sleeve, and I understand the fact that, you know, he, you know, went through some tough times recently, but you gotta be smarter than that. You know, and he basically just went full fucking retard, and I realize that's not politically correct. I really don't give a fuck. You know, it's something that used to be said all the time back in the day, so fucking deal with it. But, I mean, the term applies here. I mean, you can't be that fucking stupid, you know, and just blab something like that, especially when NASCAR is going to always have its eyes and ears open. And he paid for it, in points and in money. You know, the fact that this guy still has a cup ride makes me sick. So, and it has nothing to do with the fact that he's African American either. You know, I couldn't care less what his skin color is. I only care about whether or not you are a good person or not. And it's pretty clear that this guy is not. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, this guy can just fuck off, honestly. So Bubba Wallace is my dumbass of the week. But now that that's all out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this review and get this finally done and over with. Time for the review of the Ford EcoBoost 400 at Homestead. Alright, so final race of the year, the championship race. Stages 1 and 2 were 80 laps. Stage 3 was 107 laps, 267 lap race, 400 miles. So weather was a constant issue during the weekend as far as practice and qualifying was concerned. Qualifying for the Cup Series was rained out, so Denny Hamlin starts from the pole. Harvick jumps out ahead of the pack and leads lap number 1. Truex and Kyle Busch fight for third, with Truex winning the battle. Truex gets by Hamlin for second and begins chasing down Harvick for the lead. Truex gets around the outside of Harvick for the lead, so our first pure lead change, MTJ on lap number 21. Truex pretty much dominated the first part of this race. Kyle Larson blows by Harvick and Hamlin for second. I mean, Larson's always been good at Homestead, and a lot of people thought he would actually win this race, which wouldn't have been a surprise. Hamlin by Harvick for third. Kyle Busch gets by Harvick for fourth as Harvick continues to fall back. Looked like he had just a short run car at this point. Busch and Harvick kick off green flag stops on lap 36. Truex cycles back with a 4-second lead over Kyle Larson, and Martin Truex Jr. wins stage number 1. Yep, that's pretty much all that happened in stage 1. So yeah, stage 1 sucks some major ass. Everyone comes in for service, of course, and Truex wins the race off pit road. So he leads the start of stage number 2. Kyle Busch leads the first lap of the restart, but Truex blows back by quickly for a second pure lead change on lap 88. Kyle Larson gets by Kyle Busch for second. We had 3 wide for second between Larson, Busch, and Harvick on lap 94. And this is really when the race started to pick up a little bit, because we had this 3-way battle for second between Larson, Busch, and Harvick. That was actually pretty interesting, and we're basically swapping back and forth. I mean, Busch and Harvick, I mean, they would go high and then cross over and pass each other like 5 fucking times in a succession of like 6 laps. That was actually pretty cool. I was actually into that because, you know, hey, you know, something happens to Truex, I mean, they're fighting for the championship at that point. So I was actually pretty much into that. At this point it was just for third, but I mean, you never knew what could happen. Hamlin continues to fall back, now back to 7th, so he was in trouble at this point in the race. The fight for second between Larson, Busch, and Harvick continues. Kyle Busch gets by Larson for the second position on lap 109. Hamlin kicks off green flag stops on lap 119. Truex pits from the lead on lap 121. Kyle Busch actually cycles back from the lead to the lead at this point. But this is the point where Truex's crew really fucked up at a very pivotal point. Truex had to come back down pit road because the front tires were switched. The left sides were on the right sides, and the right sides were on the left sides. And the problem with that is the tires are made in such a way where the left sides, you know, wear from left to right. And if you have that on the other side, eventually the tire is going to fail. Not to mention the fact that the size of the tires on the left sides compared to the right sides are completely different. So, yeah, and he knew it right away. I mean, Cole Pern also said that he also couldn't tell because of, you know, the markings on the tires, but Truex could feel it right away that something was wrong. Because when you have a dominant car like that and all of a sudden it just completely changes on you, you know, it's like, yeah, something's wrong. So he had to come back down pit road and get the tires switched out. So that was a major mistake by the 19 team. But because of the fact that he pretty much lapped everybody all the way up to 13th place, he was the first car 1 lap down, and it was actually, you know, still passing cars left and right. So he still had a fast car. And then he would get the big break with the one and only caution on lap 136. When the 36 of John Hunter Nemechek spins in turn 1. It was kind of a half spin. But NASCAR decided to throw the caution, and Truex got the free pass. So that was a huge break for him. All 12 lead lap cars at that point come in for service. Kyle Busch wins the race off pit road. Several drivers decide to take the wave around, so Truex actually started about mid-pack instead of at the back of the pack like he would have. So that was a huge break for Truex. But yeah, this was actually a pretty damn clean race. I mean, only one caution the entire day, and it was for a half spin. But Kyle Busch leads on the restart. Harvick gets underneath Busch for the lead in turn 3 for a third pure lead change on lap 143. Bit of contact between Hamlin and Ryan Blaney, who was racing for position. Busch starts closing back in on Harvick. Truex blows by Hamlin for 5th as he starts coming back towards the front. He gets by Blaney with ease in turn 4 for the 4th position. Busch and Harvick start fighting hard for the lead at the end of stage 2. And Kyle Busch actually managed to get back by him for a 4th pure lead change of the day on lap 156. And Kyle Busch wins stage number 2. So, much more interesting stage 2 than stage 1. So everyone comes in for service. Kyle Busch wins the race off pit road. And at this point, the championship 4 come out in the top 4 spots. So Kyle Busch leads the start of stage number 3, the final stage to determine the champion. And this whole stage went green. We had 3 and 4 wide in the pack. It was pretty crazy. And then all of a sudden, Denny Hamlin was leading this race. I'm like, wait, what the fuck? Where did he come from? Because I remember he was, dropping back into the mid-pack near the end of stage 2, and all of a sudden he's leading the race. Like, what the fuck? That made me go wide-eyed there. And he got by Kyle Busch for a 5th pure lead change of the day on lap 168. But then Kyle Busch gets back around him 2 laps later for a 6th and final pure lead change of the day. That's to say that the beginning of this stage wasn't good. I mean, the championship 4 at this point were all within a second of each other. I mean, I was like, holy shit, this championship could go to anybody at this point. Harvick gets by Truex and Hamlin for 2nd, but Hamlin gets it back a few laps later. Bubba Wallace comes down pit road with a flat right rear tire, but no caution flag. Truex gets by Harvick on the outside for 3rd. Larson gets by Harvick for 4th. So once again, Harvick just didn't have the long run car that a lot of other guys had, but decided to try a different strategy, which ultimately didn't work out. But Jones gets by Harvick for 5th, Harvick falling back at the end of this race. Larson gets by Truex for 3rd. And then Larson kicks off green flag stops on with 59 laps to go, but would ultimately fall out of the race a lap or 2 later with a blown motor. So tough break for him, because he was definitely a contender to win this race. Hamlin is the first of the title contenders to pit with 58 laps to go. And this is where they completely fucked up, because they actually put a huge piece of tape on the grill, and it was a pretty damn big piece. And we'll get to that in a minute. Kyle Busch pits from the lead on the next lap. Truex and Harvick stay out a little bit longer. Truex actually pits with 52 laps to go, so he basically had 5 laps fresher tires than Kyle Busch did. Problem was he ended up being over 10 seconds back when everything cycled out. William Byron reported no oil pressure and was slow on the racetrack. So a lot of people were wondering, well, will that bring out the caution? And it turned out it didn't. He managed to get back to pit road. And then Denny Hamlin starts reporting that his engine is overheating. The temperatures are pegged. And you could see the water streaming out of the right side, even though it was a really cool night. The problem was that piece of tape they put on the grill covered too much of it. And the engine was basically almost cooked as a result. So they had to come back down pit road and take the tape off, which ended up cooling the engine back down. But yeah, that pretty much took Hamlin out of the championship, and a lot of people had him pegged to be the champion this year. Harvick finally pits on lap 224, which hands the lead back to Kyle Busch, and Kevin Harvick at this point is a lap down. He has a lot fresher tires, and credit to him where credit is due. He managed to get back down to like 13 seconds by the time the end of the race came along. But yeah. So Kyle Busch comes back with the lead, and he has a 10-second lead over Truex, who's in 2nd, with 40 laps to go. And at this point, absolutely nothing fucking happened. Like, seriously? a 40-lap run to determine the champion, and absolutely nothing fucking happens for the rest of this race. I mean, Truex was able to cut it down to under 5 seconds by the time, the white flag came out, but I mean, this was probably the most anticlimactic finish to a championship I've ever seen. I mean, that's pretty much all there was to it. Kyle Busch would end up cruising to the victory. I think he led 119 laps in this race, and he takes the checkered flag, winning the Ford EcoBoost 400 for his 5th win of the year, the 56th of his career, and becomes the 2019 NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series champion for a 2nd time. And under the old Winston format, I think he would have had the most points there as well. So, the right guy, whether you like it or not, won this championship. But yeah, this was a very anticlimactic finish to the championship, which, I mean, considering how shitty these playoffs were this year, I'm not surprised. I'm honestly not surprised that the finish, to this race and to the championship was probably, the most snooze-inducing of the entire season. Well, that's going to do it for all of that. Before we sign off here, though, here are the race results. Alright, so your top 10 finishers for the Ford EcoBoost 400. Kyle Busch with the victory and, of course, the championship. Martin Truex Jr. comes home in 2nd. 2nd straight year he's finished 2nd in the race and the championship. This year he had 7 total victories. Kyle Busch had 5 total wins. Between the two, they led 223 of the 267 laps. I mean, this was all Joe Gibbs Racing in this race and this year. I mean, Joe Gibbs Racing won 19 of the 36 races this year. I mean, that's just insane. Eric Jones, he came home in 3rd, so that's a 1-2-3 for Joe Gibbs Racing. Kevin Harvick comes home 4th in the race, led 41 laps, ultimately finished 3rd in the championship for a 3rd consecutive year. Joey Logano came home in 5th. Of course, his title defense comes to a close. Clint Bowyer in 6th, Ryan Newman 7th. Wow, Ryan Newman actually came home with a top 10 finish very quietly. And so did Austin Dillon and Alex Bowman. And Denny Hamlin rounds out the top 10. So with that out of the way, here are the final official series standings. Kyle Busch, of course, the champion. Martin Truex Jr. in 2nd. Kevin Harvick 3rd. And Denny Hamlin in 4th. Now, for the other 12 drivers, if they get knocked out before the championship 4, then they revert back to points that were earned throughout the playoff run. So, as a result, Joey Logano comes home in 5th in the championship. Kyle Larson comes home in 6th. I think that's his highest ever points finish. Of course, he made it to the round of 8 for the first time. Got a win at Dover. And even though he had 8 DNFs, he still came home 6th in the championship. So good for him. Ryan Blaney comes home 7th in the championship. Brad Keselowski in 8th. He got knocked out in the round of 12. Clint Bowyer. Wow, he actually came home 9th in the championship, despite, starting from the number 15 spot. I mean, he actually did pretty decently after he got knocked out of the round of 12. And he still ended up with some pretty solid finishes. He actually ended up with 18 top 10s overall. So, the only problem was he had 7 DNFs on top of that. So, but he still ended up with a top 10 points finish. So, good recovery by Clint Bowyer. And Chase Elliott manages to sneak into the top 10 in points despite his horrendous round of 8. As for the rest of the finishers of the playoff, you have William Byron, Alex Bowman, Kurt Busch, Eric Almirola, Ryan Newman, and Eric Jones. As for my final rating for the Ford EcoBoost 400, I mean, that first stage was absolute garbage, and then the final 40 laps of this race was absolute garbage. You know, it had 6 pure lead changes, and you know the middle portion of this race was actually pretty good. But when the final championship run, you know, those last 40 laps were as boring as batshit as those last 40 laps were. It really brought this down a notch. So my final rating for this race, 3.5 out of 10. You know, and it's honestly indicative of just how fucking garbage these playoffs were this year. And it's a shame because this race had potential, and it showed it had potential in the middle portion of this race. But, you know, due to people, you know, having, you know, shit-tastic pit strategies, it just completely ruined the finish of this race and of this championship as a result. And the second half of this year really sucked. I mean, this season started out on a high, and then it just went fucking downhill, it seemed like, once we got to the playoff, especially when we got to the round of 8. I mean, from the round of 8 onward, this season sucked ass. Just a bunch of mediocre races all in a row to finish this season, and it's just, I mean, it really drags down what was a pretty solid 2019 season, honestly. Because Talladega was the cat's ass. How good it was. But then, you know, Kansas was actually, I think, pretty decent too. But then after that, boy, this season went into the gutter. And I think it really, you know, exposed how bad this package can be. So I think it's obvious that they really need to make some changes because, you know, NASCAR, you know, the teams wanted, you know, the one-size-fits-all thing for the entire season. You know, the problem with that is that analogy is just not going to work. I mean, you don't have one-size-fits-all for fucking condoms because everybody's size is going to be different. I mean, yeah, you'll have some that'll be a perfect size, but, you know, then there'll be some that it won't fit. You know? I mean, it's just a stupid mentality to have, especially when you have all these different racetracks on the schedule. So this one-size-fits-all mentality is fucking stupid. So, you know, NASCAR needs to come up with something, you know, for each of the individual types of tracks because, I mean, while the racing this year was definitely much improved in a lot of cases, there's still a lot of work to be done, to be honest. But that will bring the 2019 season to a close at long last. It has been a long fucking season. Started all the way back in February, and we ended off here in the middle of November. And we finally get a much needed break for about 3 months, which is actually quite a bit of time. Until Daytona rolls around in 2020. But nonetheless, congratulations to Kyle Busch on his second championship. Of course, kind of needed after the first one had an asterisk next to it because of the injury situation. But he has a championship to call his own, and it can be legitimized because he would have won it with the Winston format or with this format. So I know a lot of people don't like him, but you know, whether you like him or not, the right guy won the championship this year. So that's just the way it is. But and that was actually the final race of this decade. We're heading into a new decade coming soon, 2020. The roaring 20s of the 2000s. But yeah, for those of you that decided to watch my videos on the fuel this year, thank you very much. It has been a long ass season between NASCAR and IndyCar, but we are finally coming to a close, and get back after it next year. We're starting at Daytona with the Daytona 500. So thank you very much for watching, and until next season, this is the PackerMan signing out. Well, that is all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to rate, comment, favorite, like, and subscribe to my channels here on YouTube.com and over on BitChute.com. If you would like to sponsor my channel, go to my channel page at Subscribestar.com. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out. Have a good one.